In 2021, I was diagnosed with cancer, with gastric cancer. And I had a gastrectomy, which was an entire removal of my stomach. And it was during COVID time. And so 4 months after that, I ended up in hospital, and it took me, it took doctors, a team of neurologists and oncologists in South Africa, 7 months to diagnose CIDP. Needless to say, I didn't even know what CIDP was. So I had to get onto Google again and inquire and find out what CIDP was. All I knew was that I had limited movement in my hands and no movement in my legs. So the greater part of my journey was in an intensive care unit in a hospital in South Africa. And the impacts were felt more by my family than myself. I came around to realizing that this was actually a very serious disease, and it needed life-changing methodologies to try and influence my recovery, but also to influence other people's recovery. So it was a matter of 7 months to answer your question, but it's a lifetime really. And that's what we're stuck with, but that's what we fight on with. I believe that a large part of the disease is psychological. And without psychological assistance, if you consider I played a lot of sport until I was 40, I was a golfer until I was 45 years of age. You know, I played football, and to come from that role into a wheelchair was immensely impacted intellectually, physically, emotionally. And I think my family bore more of the brunt of the disease than I did. You know, I was in bed, I was in a coma, and they really had to deal with all the issues. I had a daughter who was in university, who was asked to be flown up to say goodbye to me because my doctors gave me 48 hours to live. So she had to come some 2,000 kilometers away from Cape Town to Johannesburg to say goodbye to her father. And obviously that played an emotional role on her. So one of the things that I want to put forward to the foundation that is, and like-minded people, is that we need to deal with the psychology of the disease as well as the physical impact of the disease. It's equally important to have an understanding of what happens here compared to what happens to the rest of your body. It's a tough question, and you know, I fly the flag of my country very, very highly. But the unfortunate reality is that 90% of South Africans can't afford medical insurance. And there isn't a national health bill in South Africa as yet, which means that the medication that I'm privileged to is only available to about 10% of the populace of South Africa. So 90% of the people, which would be 90% of people with autoimmune diseases, don't get the medication that I'm privileged to. And the reality is we're probably about 20 years behind Europe and the USA in the medication that I'm receiving. So I'm kind of reaching out to the rest of the world to level the playing fields in terms of medical advancement, medical knowledge, and the availability of drugs and medications for pharmaceuticals to be given to the general populace. I think in 2025, we're at the forefront of AI, and traditional research methodologies might not be profound to the extent that medical practitioners have all the information. I don't believe that we use enough of AI in terms of research, in terms of clinical research, and that's where I'd like to see researchers reaching out to get a greater understanding of the likes of GBS and CIDP and all other autoimmune diseases and that as well. So for me, we're on the back foot in terms of traditional research. We've got AI, we've got the ability to use social media to talk about our diseases more, and I don't think we do enough of that. We're fortunate enough to have the foundation, which is profound in creating awareness about autoimmune diseases and making sure that the world understands what people are going through, albeit we're only 0.01% of the world population. The public come back to the point of awareness, and there's likely a large number of misdiagnosed people in the world who don't realize that they're walking around with autoimmune disease. Whether it's a retrospective gene, whatever the cause, I mean, it's an immune system fighting against your nervous system. It might not reflect now, but it's something that could affect you when you get a bit older or further down the road in that as well. So it's important to have an awareness that people know what is an autoimmune disease. It's strength in unity, and I think that's the real thing about creating this awareness is we all want to live a proper life. We all want to have access to medication, but the strength that you get from your brother who's walking with you is immense in the journey as well. I'm selfish in the fact that I want to try and make a difference in South Africa to start off with. And however, if I can reach out to people across the world, which we do on our social media platforms, and make a difference around the world, then it must add huge impetus to both finding a cure for our afflictions, but in purporting and presenting humanity as profound in terms of not only our intellect and ability to produce the best machines and that, but to be wholehearted and to be benevolent in what we're doing. We're 8 billion people on the planet, and if you take a percentage of that, there's a large number that are afflicted by diseases of which we know not a lot. So if one person can make a difference, you're changing a huge number of lives if you do the mathematics.